In this video, I want to talk about why I will probably never return to Catholicism. Now, if it's not clear, if you've been watching my videos for a while, this channel is about me. With that being said, the most interactions I get are dealing with spiritual, magical, or mystical things, so I have a tendency to focus there even though I have a plethora of interests. One of the things that I mention in a lot of my spiritual videos is how I was raised. I was raised as a Roman Catholic. I became a Catholic, I went to Catholic school, I did all the ceremonies and stuff like that. And the interesting thing is, the reason that I left Catholicism is actually the response that the Catholic teacher had, one of my Catholic teachers had, to my exploration of the mystical arts. So back in 1995, roughly, I was around 13 years old or so, I got one of my first spell books, which was, I still have it, it's Earth Power by Scott Cunningham. And I was researching and looking into this stuff, and I found that through what I now would call today etheric touch, or touching with intent, spiritual healing, basically, and this works for everyone. This is not like a special magical power that's only mine. When people think about it this way, so if you believe in magic, you understand what I'm talking about. If you don't believe in magic, think of it this way. If you love someone, doesn't matter what kind of love. It could be love of a spouse, a child, a family member, a friend, and you give them an embrace and a hug. You feel that. Maybe you don't, but I would argue most people feel it. You can feel an embrace with meaning. So in a way, and I'm sure it can be scientifically explained through something with hormones or chemicals in the body, but you can feel intent when you embrace someone. The idea behind spiritual healing, at least from one aspect and approach, is your thoughts and intent radiates from you in a way. It gives a presence. And again, maybe there's a scientific deep dive of why and how it works. Again, chemical, maybe, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Specifically, though, if you think positive intents and want someone to feel better, and you place your hands upon them, it has a tendency to assist them to heal. Doesn't magically make things go away like cancer and make wounds close up instantaneously. No. But can this touch help? Yes. You can also see examples of this when a child is born, supposedly, according to online sources, if a child is never picked up and touched and held, it can actually, the child can pass or get very depressed. Like they need that embrace, they need that comfort, that warmth, that touch, the power of touch between two humans with meaning and intent and purpose has power. So again, going along the idea of wanting someone to feel better, laying on of hands, etheric touch and spiritual healing. Okay. So at a very young age, I had researched and discovered this. And I truly believe myself, including anyone else out there, has the ability to use magical healing through touch. The Catholic Church told me that if I was not healing in the name of Jesus, I was using the devil's power. Did not feel right to me at all. I thought it was wrong. Up to that point, I would say that I was fairly spiritual. We didn't bring up, in my upbringing, in my raising, we didn't bring up Catholicism on a regular, everyday basis. But we did go to Catholic school on Sundays, me and my brothers. We attended a church. We attended all the different, what do they call them? Sacraments and stuff like that. We did all the different sacraments. So it was part of our lives without being the center focus of it. But that moment of being told that made me go, this doesn't feel right. Now, like many who have some sort of a problem with their spirituality, the way that they're raised, I went down a path of, I'm going to figure things out for myself. And at first, I'm like, I had a very strong distaste for Catholicism. As I continued to explore, I eventually ran into someone who introduced me at the time. They were a Wiccan, and they introduced me to some books, and I started expanding my mind to the idea and the possibility of a god and a goddess. And I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. Even from a Catholic mindset and a viewpoint, I mean, if, like in the Bible, right, we're made in the image of God. Well, there's men and women, so why wouldn't there be both? And everything in nature has a masculine and feminine force, a male and a female, a mother and a father, that creates life. Life comes from the joining of the two different opposite forces. So a lot of that made sense and resonated with me. So then I started down that path and reading a lot of those different books. I didn't really become a Wiccan, but I was at least exploring Wiccan writings and a lot of stuff from Llewellyn's. That's how a lot of that started. So going down that path, and I'm going to get back to the point of why I can't return, or I don't feel like Catholicism is the path for me, but I still have love and respect for it, especially today. And I have had more so recently. So this is a story. This is a journey for me. As I went down further into this path, it started to be a complete distaste. So much to the point that the Bible that my paternal, so maternal would be mother's side, paternal would be father's side. So my paternal grandmother had bought me a Bible. And I've looked everywhere through the house because recently I've been wanting to say, you know what, let's at least read it again. Let's take another deep dive into it. And I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm almost positive I got rid of it. I was like, I didn't want Bibles in my house. I didn't want anything to do with any sort of spirituality that had to do with monotheism, because I felt like most of the individuals to me at the time, they were arrogant. They thought they had the only answer. They were judgmental. They were two-faced. They didn't understand what they were talking about. Like, I just had a really negative vibe. But the older I get, the more I relook at it, and I'm starting to reassess that assessment. I'm starting to look at monotheism as maybe we're believing the same thing. And what I mean by that is I like reading stuff like the Catechism of the Catholics, which I've mentioned in other videos before, where they're talking about they don't view God in the way of God as a man sitting on white clouds in a chair with a long white beard and white robes. That idea is not what they believe according to the catechisms, but instead God is this universal force that is beyond our comprehension, that created us, loves and cares about us, but it's not a man, it's not a woman, but they usually say he because God is a personal being in their eyes. So I'm like, wait a minute. So a lot of the neo-pagans, not all of them, but a lot of them, they have this viewpoint to where all of the gods, some of them view all of the gods as actual nature itself and their different aspects, but it's still all nature. So there's this unity. There is a monistic viewpoint, a monistic meaning everything is connected and in harmony and together. Also, many of the different origins and sources don't have an actual creation story per se. And if they have a creation story, the gods themselves still came from somewhere. So two of the paths that I'm very, very interested in because of my own heritage is the Celtic stuff, specifically from the Irish side, and the North Scandinavian stuff because my mother was born in Iceland. So those two have really appealed to me. So I really deep dive those. If you look at the different origin and creation stuff from the North Scandinavian sagas, right? We have like Ginnungagap, and that was between Muspelheim and Niflheim, and it melted and it created this like toxic fume stuff. And we have Ymir. We have this cow first that comes in Ymir. It also comes from there. And the first of the Jotnar come out of Ymir. And then we have Odin. So a lot of people look at that and they're like, Odin's the Allfather. But Odin has a source, right? Where did the Ginnungagap come from? Where did all the different realms come from? And even when Odin, right? Odin has a father. He is Bor's son. So Bor is one of the Jotnar. And Odin, Vili, and Ve, even though they destroy, and the sagas destroy Ymir and create Mithingarther, our realm, with the earth out of his body and stuff like that, and then goes down. And in their creation myth, it's very similar to what you might see in some of the Christian myths with Adam and Eve. Well, they go down and find an ash tree and an elm tree, Askir and Embla, and make the first man and woman and carve them, and the three gods, give them breath and everything else and life and thought. So they craft them. But still, Odin, it's Odin's son. So there's someone before, there's a creator before. So in essence, even with that saga and Edda, and if you want to believe in that over the Christian creation mythology and the creation myth there, God as a force, as an energy, as a divine essence, could have existed before and created the gods and Ginnungagap and all the realms still. So that could still play in there. And if you look at some of the Celtic and Irish stuff, there is no creation myth. You have the Tuatha Dé Danann, the children of the goddess Danu, who come over to Ireland. And then you have the Fomorians that are there. And there's this battle between them. And then the Irish come in within the Book of Invasions. and then they're like the greater she, so they go into the underworld realms and stuff like that. And even in today in Irish Catholicism, a lot of the Tua de Danann have become saints, right? Brigid, one of their main goddesses in the Irish Celtic stuff. You have Saint Bridget now, or even Saint Brigid. Some will call just Saint Brigid, with some of the same properties and qualities, so that the aspects are still there. So again, why couldn't there be what they're thinking of as God? The problem for me, so talking about all of that, seeing how it relates and the way that I view it, it's possible that everyone's right. They're just calling it something slightly different. And this is just one example. A lot of the stuff that's written in the Christian wisdoms and philosophies and ways to be a good person that we mostly agree with as a society, what is humane, what is to be human, what is to be kind, we have an agreement, a societal agreement on the way people should act. But a lot of these morals and teachings and understandings, you can find echo in different spiritualities that even predate Christianity. Like, even if you look at some of the, so there's apparently a Babylonian story that almost directly mirrors some of the stuff that you find in the Bible with their creation and stuff. And even the life of Jesus can be mirrored in some of these other beings in like some of the Egyptian stuff, which again predates. You have some of the Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist teachings, and a lot of these things, and I've done videos on these before, a lot of these sayings and wisdoms that are listed in the Bible that people like and are good, or are listed in Christian teachings, are already been written before. It's like they've been pulled together. And a lot of people like to point out, oh, the Christians stole this. No, this is societal and cultural stuff that belongs to everyone. People still do those cultures, and they just adapt it. And I really think that if you look at Christianity, when it was adapted by different cultures, they kept doing their cultural stuff, just changed the names of it. So I think Christianity today is different than the initial cult that started in the Middle East, because it is from the Middle East. It is from the area, the Israelites, right? So you have like Judaism, you have like Islam, and you have the Christianity stuff. All of that was that same region, and it was very culturally structured. And that's one of my issues. I don't feel like the Bible is a book that I personally want to follow. Reading the Old Testament, yeah, the Psalms are actually not that bad. The Psalms are pretty good, and the what's the other one? There's two things, and there's the Proverbs. Proverbs and Psalms are pretty good. But again, I've seen a lot of that wisdom reflected in other cultures. But the Old Testament, I mean, they're talking about like genocide and slavery and abuse and killing and death and violence and wrath. That all bothers me. I'm not down with that. And I don't think most Christians are either, but it's in their Bible. So that turns me away from that. Apparently the Torah is part of the Old Testament, and in Judaism, they also use that book amongst many other books. So it's like, I don't have any biological ties to that area or region, so that's not part of my people, right? I'm not descended from them. The original Bible is in like Hebrew, and there's some Aramaic, and eventually got translated into Greek. So it's like, that's off-putting for me. Like, I want to read it still, and I'm reading, and I'm putting forth the effort, and I'm trying to look at it through new eyes instead of being clouded-minded. I was raised with this, moved away from it for so many years, and then more recently started looking at it again, reconsidering it, probably last year or two. But I can't get down with the Bible. I just don't think the Bible's right. I don't think it's an unerring word of God, even if it's divinely inspired. And the way that they talk about God in the Bible, they're specifically talking about one specific God. They're not doing this universal God, which I think a lot of people are viewing today that are Christian, and even the pagans, I would almost argue. Because even if you believe that the gods are individual deities, that are individual beings themselves versus reflections of nature, there's still this idea of everything being whole and being connected. I personally kind of view whatever this greater source is, it literally is existence itself. We're alive and aware because of the divine spark within us. This divinity, which I would argue is what many people refer to as God, is all present, and it is part of all religions. They're just calling it different things. But the Bible seems to suggest it's not. They're specifically referring to a specific being, a specific deity, known as either Yahweh or Jehovah, depending on how the name gets translated and which language. They're referring to the God of the Israelites. And if you go back and search within history and historically speaking, this Yahweh had a temple, and there were other gods around as well, including a consort, a female goddess by the name of Asherah. If I'm to trust some of the sources that I've looked into, and I probably should look up some of the stuff and share some links below. If people are interested, I'll share it in future videos. If you want to comment below, I can make a video about some of the sources of this. But if you look up the Israelites, there were a multitude of gods. And even in the Bible, there's some things that are suspect that make people have questions about. And of course, Christians will interpret it the way they want to support their beliefs, which is fine. That's what we all do. We look at something and we have confirmation bias that we're looking for. We're looking for things to prove our points. We want it to confirm our beliefs. So with that all said, basically it comes down to I just don't believe in the Bible. So that's one of the two main reasons. The other reason is Jesus, or as we go back to the figure that may have existed historically, and I say may have because Christians will argue there's plenty of proof. I don't think there is. I think that there might be supposedly like court documents from Rome of there's this guy who was crucified because of causing a stir and stuff like that. I think that's the only actual evidence. Everything else is hearsay, especially from individuals who believed in the faith. So we're trusting people wrote it down right without any historical evidence of it existing. It could be all theory. It could be all symbolism. The whole Bible and the life and death of Jesus could be symbolic for other things. A lot of the Gnostic texts suggest that that's what that is. It is a symbology for things that are happening inside of us, which is a very interesting path to also discover and reach down. But the way I look at Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, I like those teachings. A lot of them make sense. This whole peace, love thing that they talk about and a lot of Christians believe in, I'm down with the teachings. But I don't believe that the historical figure whose name would have been Yeshua, not Jesus, but Yeshua ben Yosef, Yeshua son of Joseph, right? Yeshua ben Yosef would have been a teacher. And that those two things right there make it to where I can't be a Christian, because Christians believe that Yeshua was the Christ, the Messiah, the one who died for our sins. I don't believe that. So those two things right there keep me from getting back into Catholicism. There's a lot of things that I actually like about some of the Catholicism stuff. I like the fact that they're willing to teach, that there is Catholic school, that they want you to not just practice in your own way, but help you understand the practices and teachings, because it's a collective group so that you can kind of work together. I like the fact that the word Catholic itself, it means universal. It's supposed to be the church of everyone. All peoples are welcome. So you don't have to have biological ties to the creators or founders, because it's meant for everyone, for all people. I like that unification. I like that love and peace message. And a lot of people get very critical because of some bad seeds. Here's the thing. People are bad. But religion and philosophy and stuff of trying to be loving, kind, and caring is universal. And most cultural practices and spiritual paths have had something similar. There's echoes of it. I think the reason that Christianity on a whole has spread so wide is because it appeals to the kindness of human nature, and it kind of just solidified it in one place and allowed people to be unified with it. So I think there's some value there. So I have modern respect for Christianity. Some Christians piss me off because there are some judgmental Christians, but I'm finding the same thing with some of the neo-pagans or other spiritual paths as well. People are so convinced that they have the only answers, that they're right. They refuse to be told what to do. And even if they're gonna claim something from some other culture, make it up, change it and twist it so it fits their narrative, and then still say they're right and you're wrong. Even if you're also a neo-pagan. No, the way I interpret it is right. I don't care what history says. I don't care what the people who created this stuff says. I say it's this way, this is how it's gonna be. And it seems like some people are driven to some of these paths because they want control and power for themselves. They want to take self-responsibility. Now, that can be commendable and respectable depending on how they go about it. And that's my point. I've also met neo-pagans who are just one with nature. They're just embracing their place in the universe, and they're trying to discover and connect with whatever divinity is, which some people might call God. So again, looking at this, look at all of the Christians at the core of Christianity. It's about love, peace, acceptance, and understanding. They're wanting you to discover Jesus because in their mindset, that's how you get saved. That's how you get the grace of God. They're doing this from a positive way. And people are so oh, it's control and it's negative and it's judgmental and look at all the atrocities they did throughout history. It's like, but look at what people are doing today. Instead of focusing on what people who have passed have done, look at what people are doing now. And is it really the path, or is it the way they've taken the path? Judge people by their actions. So for me, at least, I have respect for that, but I can't get down with it because of the Bible and Jesus being the Savior. Those are what keeps me from it, even though I have a great respect for it. So anyway, that's my long-winded, over 20-minute story of why I personally feel like I can't return to Catholicism, even though I'm finding some appeal and I'm finding some respect for a lot of Christians and Catholics, specifically Catholicism speaks to me the most. There's like a couple YouTubers that I've seen online that I just really like what they have to say and how they speak about it. But I just can't get down with those two things that are almost prerequisite, a requirement to even being a Christian. So for me, it's not a path for me, but if it's a path for you, I hope you find what you're looking for. And I hope you remember that each individual needs to find their own path and seek it for themselves. So in the comments below, I'm kind of curious. Are you a Catholic or a Christian? Or are you not? If you're willing to share that, I'd be interested in why. Are you that way because that's how you're raised, or do you genuinely believe in it? If you are a Christian or a Catholic, how do you reconcile the Old Testament and some of the cruelty and just wrath that is depicted from God? How do you embrace and accept that? The genocide of an entire group of people, including the children. How do you justify that? I'm curious. I'm not judging you. I want to know. I want to see your perspective. And likewise, if you're not Christian, are you not Christian because you've never been Christian, or did you turn away from Christianity? So what caused you to turn away? Was there something that sparked you to find a different spirituality or have no spirituality at all? I'm just kind of curious. I like to hear thoughts. So I shared mine. Now let's hear some of yours. But anyway, as always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.